Thanks. Well, I'd like to support the comments of Deputy McHugh, and in asking the question of the Minister for an update about the plans to close the RTE office in London, I'm asking basically, first of all, in light of the role, I'm asking the Minister what his views are in light of the role this office has played in the coverage of British-Irish relations, including in relation to steps taken jointly by both countries in respect of the peace process in Northern Ireland. And what I would say about that is, you know, the RTE office in London over the years has had coverage of milestones in British-Irish relations and the role of those relations in relation to the peace process. And for example, that includes the signing of the Anglo-Irish Agreement, the Downing Street Declaration, and obviously over the years meetings between the two premiers, the British Prime Minister and the Taoiseach of Ireland. And secondly, I would make the point that a bedrock of good quality public broadcasting is news, as far as I'm concerned. Talent shows and celebrity quests come and go, but you know, the news is always the solid thing about a public broadcaster or any good quality television station. And I would say that I would mention as well that in relation to British-Irish relations, I chair the Good Friday Agreement Committee. We had Senator George Mitchell there on Friday, and one of the things points he made was that the Good Friday Agreement itself was the end of the beginning. And you know, and very often in agreements like that in relation to processes, it's the implementation is often the hard part. You know, there's still a lot of work to be done in relation to British-Irish relations. There's still many issues that have to be implemented, many parts of the agreement that have to be implemented. There's still many issues that have to be addressed. And, you know, I would feel that the role of RTE in covering all of that is extremely important. And thirdly, I would make the point in relation to the need to respect the fact that many people on this island have a strong connection with Britain due to our history and through emigration. And I would make mention in that regard that, as we know, unionists identify with Britain, and those unionists are obviously in Northern Ireland, but obviously in the island as a whole. Secondly, there are over about 113,000 British citizens in Ireland now, and that's not to mention the fact that in the Good Friday Agreement there was an agreement that basically provided that the people of Northern Ireland could identify themselves as Irish or British or both, as they may choose, and accordingly have a right to hold both British and Irish citizenship. So that was another aspect of it.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thanks. And just in relation to, as the child of Irish immigrants to Britain myself, we have a strong connection to Irish immigrants. The Irish community is objecting to this closure, and I think it's very important that we keep that tie through keeping the office open.
Thank you, Deputy. And Tara?
And my appreciation to Deputies McHugh and Deputy McHugh and Deputy Tuffy for raising what I agree is an important question. But first of all, can I just formally stress that RTE is an independent national public broadcaster, public service broadcaster, whose remit and obligations are set out in law. Section 114 of that 2009 Act states that the principal objects and associated powers of RTE, and Section 98 in particular, provides that it shall be independent in the pursuance of those objects and subject to the requirements of the Act. And as such, I, as Minister, have no function in RTE's general day-to-day matters, including decisions on closure, or otherwise of any of the corporation's overseas news bureau. There is no doubt that RTE's news bureau in London has, as both deputies have said, played an important role in RTE's news broadcasting over the years. It has, in the best traditions of good public service broadcasting, delivered high-quality news, reporting on some events of major importance that have taken place in the UK and in British-Irish relations, particularly in relation to the peace process. I'm bound to say that I agree with the two deputies, and I think that the RTE Bureau has not just played a constructive role, but has had a formative influence on the evolution of relations between our two countries in the period referred to. That said, as we enter the era of digital media, the necessity for on-location overseas news bureau is not nearly as acute as it once was. I'm assured that the regrettable decision to close the RTE News Bureau in London was not taken lightly by RTE and was taken in the context of a restructuring and cost reduction programme across the entire organisation. RTE has a serious financial problem, Cathaoirleach. It incurred a net deficit of 17 million in 2011. Its commercial revenue has fallen sharply from 240 million in 2008 to 168 million in 2011, a reduction of 30%. It is crucial that the key elements of its restructuring programme are completed before the end of 2012 so that the corporation can return to a break-even or small net surplus position from at least 2013 onwards. RTE has informed my officials, and I feel it's important to recognise that this measure will not mean an end to RTE's long relationship with Britain or the Irish in Britain. RTE has assured my department that as part of its public service remit, it remains committed to covering British news, Anglo-Irish politics, the important economic, trade and business ties between Britain and Ireland, as well as stories from the Irish immigrant community. I'm advised by RTE that staff and resources from its news bureau in Dublin, Brussels or Belfast will be deployed as appropriate to cover major news stories in London. This does not require the maintenance of a costly fixed facility or a permanent staff in London. When all costs are taken into account, RTE has advised my department that the cost of the news bureau, that RTE sales and RTE sales presence in London was in the region of 800,000 per annum. This difficult decision is one of many to be undertaken by RTE and its workforce to secure the future of public service broadcasting. I'm satisfied that RTE continues to review all its operations and costs to achieve the best balance of efficiency and service within the resources available to it.
Tuffy, you have 1 minute.
Just in relation to the Minister's comment regarding his function, I believe this decision is a matter of public interest, and I would mention in that regard that the issue was also raised in Westminster by a motion that was signed cross-party, including Margaret Ritchie and Mark Durkan and a number of MPs from the Conservative and the Labour Party in Britain. And one of the things they talked about was the need for on-the-spot access for Irish-based media engagement in public life in this jurisdiction is vital to fulfil the vision of future British-Irish relations as set out by the Prime Minister and the Irish Taoiseach in their historic statement of the 12th of March. And I would say that, you know, we're at a juncture in history in relation to British-Irish relations and the peace process. As we've had the recent visit of the Queen. This is an ongoing process, and if it was important to have this office in years gone by, it's important to have it there now. And this is just short-termism in my view, and I would hope that the Minister and this debate, as representatives of the people, would have some influence in this issue. RTE is a public broadcaster and we're public representatives. Good quality news distinguishes a public broadcaster from the rest. And I mean, you can dumb down and, you know, to cut costs, but at the end of the day, that won't distinguish what a public broadcaster is.
Well, I acknowledge the conviction of both deputies on this particular matter, and I accept that their passion is motivated by the best of reasons. I think you'll be surprised, though, to hear that by the end of this year, the RTE deficit will be 50 million. I mean, it's an unconscionable amount of money. A great preponderance of that is in the redundancy programme. But they have an acute financial crisis, and I can't acquiesce in RTE running a bottom line of that order. Now, I would say to Deputy McHugh and Deputy Tuffy that in an era of digital media, it is not necessary to have the same on-location provision. I mean, rental of accommodation in the heart of London is an extremely expensive item. And if it were possible for RTE to make savings elsewhere, I'm sure it would do that. I accept Deputy Tuffy's point that there is a public interest to mention here. And, you know, I accept that I'm not in charge of the day-to-day management decisions of RTE, but you're right, I do have a responsibility a policy responsibility ultimately from the public interest dimension that you are seeking to raise here. But in circumstances where, you know, I have had to meet the board of RTE to talk to them about the financial crisis that confronts the organisation, and when the senior management of RTE are doing their best to preserve what is best in public service broadcasting while addressing that budget crisis, you know, I think it's impossible to honestly give an answer to this House to say that the closure of any bureau is not at issue. I'm advised by the professional people in RTE that between Belfast, Brussels and Dublin, in an era of digital technology, it is possible to ensure that the quality of presentation from London doesn't suffer. Now, in better times, Deputy Tuffy, Deputy McHugh, I don't see any reason why we can't review this decision, or this decision shouldn't be reviewed. But in the short term, and in a competitive broadcasting landscape, where there are constantly complaints made about the amount of revenue available to RTE in the dual sense, we have to get control of the runaway finances, and that's the only reason for this decision.
Minister.